This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website, hikingbob.com, where it has links to, well, pretty much everything. Social media, my column at The Independent, the other podcast, my hiking guidebook, and also my photography website. Also a way to contact me and sign up for my email list. All of that is at hikingbob.com. And with me today, again, is Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, Wild Westendorf here, and I've got a website, wildwestendorf.com. You can find some blog posts and links on there, and you can find me on social media, mainly Facebook, Instagram, sometimes Twitter, at Wild Westendorf.
Cool. And Kevin, thanks for being here again. We're doing this on Zoom because I am down here in Phoenix. You're up there in Colorado Springs, and the weather over the last week in Colorado Springs has taken a couple of turns.
Oh, yeah.
I think when you and I recorded a podcast a week ago, it was still kind of warm, but the next day and the day after, it got down to below zero for the first time in a long time.
Yeah. And one night, I think it was Tuesday night, it was a wind chill of -20 or something like that. Like, oh, it was awful.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. I shouldn't say unbelievable. It was, it's believable. It's Colorado, for crying out loud. And that used to be the norm, but I guess it was, what's the word I'm looking for? We were unaccustomed to it. So I guess we were just a little, holy cow, it does get cold here. We forgot what it's like to get really cold here. But it was nice.
And now less than a week later, we are recording this on Monday night. It is almost 6 p.m. and it's 52 degrees here in the Springs.
And I guess Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be super warm there too.
Yeah.
So it's going to be pretty nice. It was kind of nice because Tuesday, I went out as little as possible because it was cold. I had the dog. We went out for a walk. And even though he's got 2 coats of fur and there was snow on the ground, even he eventually has his limits. But Wednesday morning, I had a dentist appointment and I went to that. And then after that, I said, I'm going to go to the Garden of the Gods and take some pictures. And it was still about 4 below. But I ended up taking some really wonderful pictures there that I posted on Facebook and various social media stuff that really got some nice pictures. I really like those cold, crisp days when there's a little bit of snow on the trees. I would like to have been more snow out there so it covered up like all the grass is poking up, but it doesn't matter. You know, a good photographer makes do with what he has. And it really came out looking really nice. I was just thrilled with how my pictures came out and stuff like that. Did you go out in that cold weather at all, or did you stay home? I wouldn't blame you if you did.
No, I mostly spent my time at work, and when it is usually that cold, I tend to not go out. If I do, it's going to be a few miles in like Red Rock Canyon open space, but I just didn't get a chance to get out there.
Yeah, it was cold. I did manage a day or so later to go out with Cole and I went snowshoeing up the Seven Bridges Trail. And as we know, that part of Gold Camp Road where, past where it's closed, past the new parking lot, usually gets a lot of snow up there. And the middle part of the road was kind of packed down, but there was plenty of snow to go snowshoeing on and snowshoeing up on Seven Bridges. You could have done all of that without snowshoes and maybe some traction aid, but there was a lot of ice. You know how there's some ice in some of those spots up there. The snowshoes and those teeth they have on them really helped with that. It was fun to be out in the snowshoes. And once we got back up their ways, Cole got a chance to run loose a little bit and enjoy himself. So he really enjoyed it before we packed up and got in the car and drove down south. So it was nice to see some real winter weather with snow. And
yeah,
I could have maybe done without being 4 below or 5 below or whatever was below zero. Zero would have been nice, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm dressed for it. I got the gear for it. I got the clothing for it and set up for it. So why not use it, right? And go out and enjoy it.
And it was starting to warm up on Friday, and I forgot how much of a difference 20 degrees is compared to 0 degrees. Like it felt warm on Friday.
Yeah, I hear you. And some parts of the Midwest, further north of here, got really cold. They were like 10 and 12 below zero, wind chills into 30 plus below zero. Boy, I remember those days when I lived up in South Dakota back in the 70s and 80s, how cold that was, and just brutal cold. As much as I don't mind the cold weather, I don't miss that either. That's just obnoxious cold.
Yeah, yeah. And some of you would know that I lived a couple years in Indiana, and we were close enough to the Great Lakes to get that. There's a term for it, but it's the Great Lakes effect or something.
Lake effect.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And it just made the winters miserable out there. It was 3 months of just constant snow, gray skies. It was 10, 15 degrees for weeks at a time, and the snow just never melted. So it just got dirty and piled up into these massive mountains. And trust me, in Indiana, those snow mounds were considered a mountain. But the nice thing about Colorado and the West is like, you get those few days, a couple weeks of extreme cold and stuff, but then you have really nice weeks like now, where I'm looking at the forecast app, and Wednesday is showing a high of 68.
Wow.
It's going to feel amazing that day.
Cool. I think it's going to be like 88 down here. So welcome to the, well, it was 900 miles away and we are in the desert, but it's still March. It's still going to be that warm. So it's really cool. I'm enjoying it. I've never experienced that lake effect snow, but I know like places like Buffalo get it a lot too. And it doesn't extend very far inland from the lakes either. It's just a few miles, isn't it? Like maybe 10 or 15 miles. And then after that, the weather is normal, I guess.
Yeah. And because we were really close to, and I should know this, but we were in Northwest Indiana, which is Lake
Michigan, isn't it?
Between Michigan and Erie.
Okay. Were you up near Gary? Kind of up in that area?
Close to it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Probably what makes Chicago so miserable in the winter too.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, the difference there between there and here is the humidity, of course, is just through the roof. So it's that heavy, wet snow. And I've experienced plenty of humid winters, and that stuff just kind of goes right through you. And I think your bone marrow actually freezes after a point. It gets to be that bad.
The last time I went out there to visit, I had forgot about that part. And so I checked the forecast, and it was going to be in the 40s all week, that I was going to be out there. So I brought clothes that I would wear in Colorado when it's in the 40s, and like a light jacket. I was freezing the entire time because the humidity makes it so much worse.
Yeah. That humidity just goes right through your bones, comes out the other side of your bones. It is just not good. So we appreciate what we have here. It gets cold in Colorado, but like most anything else, it doesn't last a long time. And not that humid. Now we get the more humid, probably in about another month or so, we'll get that more humid snow, wetter snow. But even that's not as bad as what you get in the Midwest and the East and stuff like that. So fingers crossed. We do need the moisture. The moisture is good. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a story we have coming up and how moisture affected something. But it is winter, and we're seeing an actual winter. So it's nice to actually see some snow. Fingers crossed, the wildflowers pop up. Everybody knows how much I love those and taking pictures of those. And that's my thing. And I'm actually doing an additional workshop this coming year, in addition to the ones I normally do. So I've added a new place that's going to host a workshop that I'm going to do about wildflower photography coming up in a few months. I'll announce those when we have the dates firmly set and times and everything like that. But Kevin, you and I engage in social media, and
I'm never on social media. What?
I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't engage in it an awful lot. I don't post much personal stuff on there. I post when a column comes out, when a podcast comes out.
Yeah.
If I have new pictures on my website, I post those. Try not to engage in too much of it. And you and I kind of alluded to this last week when we talked, is that everybody on social media becomes an expert. Yeah. And I am by no means saying that I know everything about everything. I don't know everything about anything. But there's this thing about posting on social media where not only do a lot of people think they're experts at stuff, and then experts do post on there. And of course, the easy answer is, well, I don't believe you. Well, the guy's the expert. Or the person's the expert. You just can't say you don't believe them. They're the expert in whatever it is we're talking about. Road construction, for example, or trail building, or water dynamics, or whatever you want to call it. Some people are experts in this thing. And if they say they're an expert and have the education, you just can't blow them off unless you know for sure that they're not accurate. And then some people just lie. There's no lie detectors on social media. And, unless there's truth checking and there's fact checking. And one of the newsletters I get every day now is a fact check of things that are in the news. And it really helps you, weed through the BS. And I've been, I kind of experience this. I'll like post a link to something, and invariably you'll get somebody who wants to just go off the rails on why you can't trust this. And for example, I posted a link about a trail closure coming up, and a comment was made about all the parks people want to do is all they're interested in is closing trails. And I'm like, well, not really. Here's a bunch of trails we've opened. And the trail closure wasn't even the fault of the Parks Department. The trail's on somebody else's land and they're closing the trailhead. And then, of course, that derailed into here's all the things the Parks Department has done wrong and they don't tell anybody anything. And I understand that there are disagreements in policy. There are disagreements in procedure. People may not agree with how things are done. I get it. I don't agree with everything anybody does, including, agencies that I may be associated with. I don't agree with everything they do. And I make it pretty clear when I'm not exactly on board with stuff. But to just, lie about it or to spread disinformation, this trail was closed and nobody got any notice. Well, here's the notice. This thing was closed and nobody told anybody. Well, no, here's the public notice they put out on it. Doesn't help your case when you have a disagreement with somebody. Now, if you want to argue that the trail shouldn't be closed because there should have been another way around it, okay, we can engage in that discussion. But when it gets to be the point where you just want to make assertions that are just not based on fact, you're not supporting your position. And I don't know what to do about that. And I'll even take this back a little further. When the trails in Sweetwater Canyon opened at North Cheyenne Canyon Park, and you and I talked a lot about that. I wrote a series of articles about it.
Oh yeah.
There was a group of people who complained that, they didn't like the trails because they thought they were too easy. Well, okay, that's a matter of opinion. Okay, if you disagree with that, that's fine. I'm fine with that. And then somebody else said, you're taking away more trails and we've lost so many trails. To which I asked, well, I'm pretty in tune with what's going on there. Tell me what trails you've lost. Because I'd like to know. Because I sit on a committee that helps pay for trails. So tell me what trails you've lost. And the person couldn't. And then when I said, no, I really want to know, the answer was, well, you're just being condescending and rude. And I said, well, I'm sorry if you perceive me as being rude, but you made a statement. I'm asking you for clarification. You're saying that we lost trails. Tell me what trails you've lost. And nothing. So I would like to take this person seriously. And if they've lost trails, I can maybe help get some trails back or find out why these trails were closed. But when you can't provide an example or rationalities for what you're saying, that doesn't really help your case. I don't know if I'm making any sense. And I'm not here venting because I'm just mad at somebody because they made a comment. I'm just saying that if you're going to be an advocate for your position, you need to be able to be factual in it, in your statements, I guess. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got a friend who is a near and dear friend. I totally adore her, but she will often post on Facebook very reactionary type of stuff to where like she'll just try to drive somewhere, see that a road is closed, and it's just vent about it on Facebook. And then rather than like going on a city website or the news website to find out like, oh yeah, the road was closed because of a water main break or something, because stuff happens. And think with social media, it's allowed, it gives everyone a platform and a voice. And you know me, I love to rant and rave on Twitter. I post all the good stuff on Facebook. I love to post all the photos on Instagram, but I think there is the lost art of tone, of knowing what you're saying and how you say it too, because it's very, very easy to just go like, I'm mad about the trail closures. And it can sound like they're trying to insult you or they are personally upset with you about a trail being closed. And I think it's made it so easy for everyone to just react first instead of thinking and then reacting. Because when I saw that person's comment, I rolled my eyes super hard and I just sighed. I was just like, what are they talking about? And so I appreciated that you kind of like took every point that they made and said, actually, here's why this trail is closed. Here's why the bathrooms are closed. Because all that person had to do is just take a few minutes to find out why a certain trail is closed. And 99% of the time that trails are closed is temporary. If there's anything I've learned, the only trail I can think of that was permanently closed is one in Guardian of the Gods that was closed a while back. And I'm not even sure why it was so far back. It was before I got really smart about hiking and knowing to like what's a real trail, what's a social trail and stuff. So this trail may have been a social trail, but that's the only one I can think of that's actually been closed. And so when they said like all the parks folks want to do is close trails, I was like, what trails have been closed?
Yeah, and a lot of trails, like you said, that have been closed have been rogue trails, like you're talking about, that probably weren't supposed to be there to begin with. And listen, if anybody wants to disagree with me, I don't care. But if you're going to say that you're going to state something as fact, it has to be a fact, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't always get it right, but when I don't get it right, I correct it and make sure that people understand it. I didn't post all those links as a way of shaming anybody, but if somebody reads those comments and says all this stuff was done and there was no warning or no reason or no notice given, I felt it was important to say, no, actually there wasn't, because other people are going to read those things. It's not a one-way, it's not a conversation between me and that person. It's open to anybody who reads it. And I got a couple thousand followers, so they're all going to read that, or I should say, a lot of them may read that. They need to be able to see that and go, well, actually, there it is, and there it is, and there it is. That's why I did it. And I actually had somebody back in the fall also accuse me of personally profiting by my membership on a city committee.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how that happens. And then somebody else accused me on there of having salty language while commenting on Facebook. And I defy anybody to find where, at least not in one of my own posts that I just put out there on my personal page, but where I've responded to anybody about talking about any of these topics and used any type of language that could even be barely described as salty and just completely, but they drop these bombs and somebody reads that and says, well, this guy uses foul language when he's talking to somebody, a member of the public. I dare you to find where I actually ever did that. And as far as profiting personally from any of these things I do, yeah, no. There's a reason why my tax return has a big deduction for volunteer stuff. If you want to consider that being personally profiting, all that does is reduce how much money I owe the government at the end of the year. So I don't profit from anything.
You just admitted it. There it is.
Yeah,
smoking gun.
Yeah, the check I wrote is less than it might have been by maybe $50. So it doesn't matter a whole lot. In any case, I don't want to belabor. My point is that being a public advocate like I am for recreation and open spaces, and you are, and so many people who listen to this podcast are, if you're going to be an advocate or if you're going to be opposed to something, that's okay, but you really need to have your facts together. It's when I write an article for the Indy, a lot of what I write there is my opinion. I think this trail is good. I don't think it's good. That's okay. It's my opinion. But if I'm going to say that, this is how the trail was built, or this is how it was funded, or this is how the decision came to make this trail, it has to be backed up with facts. Here's actually how much it cost. Here's what it was done. There's a lot of other things too. It's what, every time CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, posts something about, paying a fee to go into a park, somebody always pipes up, what do my tax dollars go for? And then you have to explain, your tax dollars don't go for squat with Colorado Parks and Wildlife because they're not tax funded. Now, in the past couple of years, they've gotten specific buckets of tax money to use for very specific tasks, like building Fisher's Peak. They got some tax money because they had a good year. But overall, CPW doesn't get tax money. So somebody complains, but what does my tax money go to? Well, it doesn't go to CPW. They're an enterprise. They have to support themselves. It's those kind of things. Some people ask the question, but some people will just flat out say, I pay taxes. I shouldn't have to do this. Well, no, not actually how it works. In any case, I just wanted to throw that out there. It gets to be a little tiring sometimes, and I'll probably hear from people about this, but sorry, I'm venting my opinion. So there you go.
Yeah. And I totally get it. If there's a temporary closure, it can be frustrating, but I've found in my experience in regards to the parks, when there is a closure, it's because they're making something better.
Yeah, or at the very least, they're fixing something.
Yeah.
Even if they're not changing it, they're fixing something. You know, the road through North Cheyenne Canyon Park has been closed for months. It's going to be closed for a couple more months. Does that suck? Yeah. Is it a great inconvenience? Yep. Does it make hiking through there harder? Yep. Did it need to be done? Yep. Yeah, bridges in there that were 100 plus years old can't hold a fire truck or a trash truck. Probably needed to have some work done. Is it going to be an inconvenience, everybody? You betcha. But they did it in the middle of winter when traffic is less, when tourism is down. They did it the best time they can. They're working
Yep.
on it. You know, who knows? Are they going to get done sooner rather than later? I don't know. They're not planning on getting it done before Memorial Day. That's probably when it's going to be done. It is a huge inconvenience. It is a huge pain in the you know what, but it needed to be done, and it's temporary. And the same people who complain about this stuff would be the same ones that when a fire truck goes through a bridge and can't get to a fire and somebody's house burns down, they're going to complain about why didn't anybody do anything about the bridges.
Yep, exactly.
Can't have it both ways. It is just the way it is. In any case, I'm just venting a little bit. Sorry about that, folks. Kevin, let's move on to something else a little bit more fun. One of the questions I get a lot, and you get a lot, and you see on social media a lot, especially in the summer when people are coming out here to visit, is what about the bears?
Yep.
Am I going to get attacked by a bear? What's going to happen with the bears when I'm out there in Colorado? And as you and I know, Kevin, and any of our friendly parks and wildlife people know, is that really bears are really not as big of a problem as people may perceive them to be. Not to say that there's not bear activity. Obviously there is. There are bears in here. Well, CPW released a report just today, the day we're recording this, the 28th of February, that was a recap of bear activity in Colorado in 2021. It's a pretty comprehensive report. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But what's interesting about it is that bear encounters, and you and I have talked about this in the past, so let me take a step back a little bit. We were talking about how last summer was. We talked about a couple of times about how the amount of moisture that was in Colorado and the drought conditions varied greatly, whether you're on the east side of the Continental Divide versus the west side. The east side of you could draw a line right down the middle of the map, and the east side of the Continental Divide got way more moisture than the west side did, and especially the northwest corner of Colorado really got nailed. And what's interesting is this report makes reference to that in stating that basically on the east side of the Continental Divide, where there was more moisture, there were fewer bear encounters because the bears had plenty of berries and whatever else they like to eat in their natural habitat and didn't have to come down into populated areas. I thought that was really interesting. Matter of fact, the southeast corner of the state had 39.8% fewer bear encounters than the 2 previous years, while the northeast region saw a 38.2% decrease. Southwest was down quite a bit, 51.2%, but the northwest actually saw a increase. Not huge, but an increase. They were the only place saw an increase. And there's a map on here that shows the drought conditions through the state. The Northwest was pretty beat up. The entire state had a 28% decrease in numbers of reports over the previous 2 years. So it's pretty interesting. They also note on here how many bears were captured and relocated, how many unfortunately had to be euthanized. There is some concern from CPW that people may not be reporting bear encounters because they feel that CPW is going to euthanize every bear they get, not even close to the truth. They have a 3 strikes and you're out. Very few bears hit that 3 strikes where they become euthanized. And they also point out, though, that most of these bear encounters that people are reporting are human caused. They may be being chased out of their natural habitat because of drought conditions, but a lot of time they end up in backyards and neighborhoods because people leave trash cans out overnight, have bird feeders out, and are doing other things that attract bears. So it's a pretty interesting report. Not to say everything's to blame on people. I mean, I'm not saying that, but obviously that has a cause effect. If they're coming down, they're after something.
speaking of human caused things, have you heard about Hank the Tank?
I have.
It's in Lake Tahoe. It's been proven since then that it's actually the work of three large bears. But for a few weeks there, they thought it was one large 500-pound bear that had broken into 28 homes. And it's because folks are leaving food out in the trash. They don't lock up the trash. The bear gets into a habit, and that applies to here too. And you really, really, really don't want bears to get into a habit of breaking into your trash and homes to get food, because then that makes them very familiar with humans, and then eventually that will cause them to get put down. There was one incident I thought was kind of funny, but apparently the bear broke into this house while the family was there. They're in the living room, and so of course they see this huge bear breaks in. They start to panic and freak out and yell and scream, and he paid them no mind and went straight towards the kitchen, which I just think would be it's a funny image in my head that would be funny in a movie scene, but I'm sure in person is terrifying.
Yeah.
But it just shows how the bear got so familiar with humans, it had no fear. And it just knows, like, okay, I'm going to go towards the fridge because I know that's where they store their food.
And they know how to open refrigerators.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're smart. And so like I said, it's just if you're out in the woods, if you're camping, if you live in the woods or close to the woods, it's extremely important to know how to secure your home and your trash. Because then if bear goes through your trash and doesn't find anything, and then your back door is right there, they're just going to hop in. So
yeah, and reinforces what we've said before is when anybody has a bear encounter in Colorado, it is typically, as you may expect, food related. They're after food. That's all they are. They're like the sharks of land. They're like a land shark. All they do is move and eat, move and eat, move and eat. That's all they do. Either they're trying to gain weight from having been in hibernation all winter, or then they're gaining weight because they're going to go into hibernation during the winter. So that's all they do. It does tell you in here, like we've talked about before, the only bears in Colorado are the black bear, is the only species in the state. However, they can be brown or blonde or cinnamon or even black in color. So just because it doesn't look like a black bear, quote unquote black, they are black bears, and they're the only bears in Colorado. So again, when we talk about bear safety, I want to make sure that we understand that we are typically talking about Colorado only. When you go into Wyoming and you're dealing with the brown bears and grizzly bears, kind of a different thing, although some of the basic rules are still there. They just want food, but they may be, grizzlies especially, may be more aggressive. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting study. There's a lot of factual stuff in there. Again, we're talking about facts, not assertions or suppositions.
There was a viral video that I thought was really, really funny. These hikers are at a trailhead, and this grizzly bear just comes out of nowhere, walks past them, and they're doing the right things. They're making sounds. They're throwing their hands up. Then the bear like stops in front of the trailhead sign that shows the picture of the same type of bear, stares at it, and it just turns right back around. And I just think it's hilarious to imagine the bear's just like, yep, my photo is still up, and it just like walks back.
I'm still on that wanted poster. I probably should get out of here before anybody catches me. That's pretty funny. I have not seen that, but that's pretty funny. Yeah, I read about Hank the Tank, and it's 500 pounds is a huge
massive
black bear. I mean, that's a huge bear. Not so much maybe for a grizzly, but for a black bear. I mean, they usually a few hundred pounds. And a lot of the ones people see, the cubs are 100 pounds or something like that. They're not that heavy, but that is a huge bear. That's a bear that's been raiding refrigerators and people's food for quite a while and managed to get this far. Any case, it's a pretty interesting thing to read. They talk about how to prevent bear from getting into your place. How many bears they've relocated, how many had to, and actually 2021, it was one of the lowest years ever for euthanizing bears. So it definitely supports the fact that there were fewer bear encounters last year than there were in previous years. And because on the east side of the state here, we had more moisture, so they just didn't have to come down that far. Now I know people are going to say, I saw bears. Okay, that's fine. You saw bears. That doesn't mean that overall there were necessarily more than there has been, which kind of reminded me a few years ago. And they were doing a deer survey an actual census around Colorado Springs, because people were complaining there were more deer than there were before. And it actually turned out there were not more deer. There was actually the number of deer had remained fairly static over the last several years. People were seeing more of them because they were being chased out of their habitat. But just because you see them more often does not mean there are more of them. There's more of them coming down in the hills, but that doesn't mean there's more of them. So, CPW is worried about numbers. They know, and they're scientists, again, they're experts. They know how many deer, how many elk, how many bears, how many whatever can an acre or 2 acres or 10 acres or 1,000 acres of land can support. And that's how hunting licenses are doled out. So they know how to keep those populations of animals within a specific range, that they don't overgraze and starve themselves or, anything like that. So in any case, this is a pretty interesting report. I'll have a link to it in the show notes if people want to read that and take a look at that. Kind of a little bit of interest to people. People who also listen to this who are hunters would probably find it interesting too, to kind of read how they get that kind of stuff. Kevin, you did some hiking in a place that I've been to and I need to do more looking at, a place called Oil Well Flats down there near Canyon City. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and to tie it back to what we had discussed earlier, Canyon City actually got a little bit more snow than we did, or it felt like it. I was actually really, really surprised to see how much snow was still up there. And aside from some of the trails at the entrance of the park, I was the first one to lay tracks in the snow, and I forgot. It's pretty okay to hike on packed down snow or ice, especially if you have spikes on your shoes. But when it's fresh ankle deep snow, it's a workout. I'm still a little bit sore in muscles in my legs. I don't think I've felt soreness there for a very long time. Regardless, though, it was a gorgeous hike. I did this loop that tied together a few of the trails. But the highlights is in this loop, you go up to this area called Island and the Sky, and where you get this amazing view of the wet mountains. And I'm not sure if there's a name for that valley, but you get this amazing view, and then you have these like dramatic cliffs that normally I love to take photos of me sitting on cliff edges so I can send those photos to my mom to scare her, but she hates it when I do that.
This is why you do very nice things for your mom on Mother's Day, because you're making up for all this, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And she gets mad, and I tell her like, well, the fact I sent you this picture means I'm alive. So just gorgeous place. I decided not to do the cliffside photo this time because of the snow and ice, and I just like, no, I'm not going to get close to the edge and accidentally slip and then like actually die. But beautiful hike. And it was the most I've ever seen of animal prints. And I'm not sure if it's because when I usually hike on snow, a lot of it has thawed or frozen over, but there were just animal prints everywhere. And I could figure out what some prints were, but it's definitely like mice and rabbit and cows, because there are cows in the area. And I forget how much a place can be thriving when humans are not around. And it's obvious they haven't been around because of the snow and the weather and stuff. And then when I got up to Island and the Sky, there were fresh mountain lion prints. And then what I could see were
that's cool.
Yeah, it was
terrifying.
Awesome. Yeah, because I was just like like constantly looking back. And what I could see were clearly like smaller cat prints. So I'm not sure if those were cubs. I'm not sure what season that is for them, or if they were bobcat prints, but definitely like cat prints, just smaller. And then it's clear with the larger prints that it's a mountain lion, but it's only the second time I've seen it. The first time was when I was up on Bison Peak, and there was fresh snow at the very top. And so I hike up at the top. It's gorgeous. And on my way down, I saw a brand new set of tracks that came down from where I just was, the side of the mountain across the trail. And I know for a fact I didn't see those tracks on my way up because I was the first one to put anything in the snow. So it's kind of scary too. It's like, I was probably really close to a mountain lion. This further enforces the point though that they tend to avoid us. So it probably saw me and it's like, nope, I'm getting out of here. But yeah, it was just really, really cool to see all the prints, especially the mountain lions one. I was a little on edge because of the mountain lion prints. So there was one point right after that I noticed I had to tie my shoe. So when I went and bent down to tie my shoe, a strap from my backpack like flew in front of my face.
I see where this is going.
It scared the crap out of me. It's like I was just like, I actually jerked back. I was like, oh, because I just in a split second, I just imagine it was like a mountain lion paw print about to swipe me or something. It's just it scared me so bad. And it,
Excuse me, mister, are you my lunch? Are you my lunch? I think you're my lunch.
it's I laughed about that for like 5 minutes afterward. It's like, come on, Kevin, like relax. So Island in the Sky is really cool, but then you go down into a an area called Fire Canyon, and I'm assuming it's called that because you're in a little canyon and the rocks around you are red, but it's really pretty and stuff. I would definitely recommend that as more of a spring and summer hike rather than a winter hike with all the snow because it is a workout. But it's similar to Red Rock Canyon open space where you have dozens of trails that all loop together and stuff. So I used the Cotrex app to kind of keep track of which trail I wanted to turn on to maintain a loop. But yeah, you can do a small loop, you can do a large loop. The one I did is 10 miles. There's one I want to go back and do that will be about a 12-mile loop. And it's just a fun desert hike and it's gorgeous out there.
Cool. I'm going to have to get out there again. It is a beautiful area. And if you go down the Shelf Road, there's a lot of places that cut off of there. And there's some really nice hidden gems off of that road. And that road goes through, narrow little canyon, but there's a lot of stuff out of there that looks really interesting. I need to get down there and do some more. So I'm glad that you had a chance to visit it and check it out. Tell us what it was like down there, because I definitely would like to see some more of that. So I'm working on a list of places that I'm going to visit during the spring and summer months, and we'll be doing articles on them as we go through the year, visiting some of these places. I'll be reporting on as we move further along into the year. It's interesting what you talk about the mountain lion tracks. I had a similar experience in Queens Canyon some years ago, where when I hiked down the canyon, there were no footprints behind me. When I came back up, there were mountain lion tracks on top of mine. Never saw it. Hopefully it had lunch before it saw me and didn't think I was worthy of chasing down, going, I'm full, I don't need to go get this guy. And the last time I was in the new Sweetwater Canyon trails, I hiked in and did a loop, and I had Cole with me, and he sniffs out everything. But as we went down, didn't see anything remarkable, hiked the loop, came back up, and all of a sudden there's this remnant of a deer leg in the middle of the trail.
Oh, yeah.
That I know was not there because A, I would not have been able to miss it. And B, Cole would have done what he did on the way back up, which was stop and sniff it and look at it and see if it was something he was interested in. So somewhere in there, some mountain lion had probably taken out and dragged a deer carcass across the same trail that we had come on. Somewhere behind us had done that. That's kind of cool. It's kind of cool because it's nature doing its thing. That, how the circle of life goes. That's how nature works. That's how our ecosystem remains in some kind of balance. And also a little frightening that some animal just took out an animal and we didn't hear it, didn't see it, didn't smell it. But here's evidence that it happened, because that was not there when we went back down this. And it was only maybe an hour from when we passed that point, and we came back around it. So it's just kind of cool to see that stuff. It's kind of cool to see nature doing its thing.
That actually reminds me of two short stories. The first one, so when I saw the mountain lion tracks on Bison Peak, I had done that hike in the winter before the big snow came. So I saw the tracks and everything, and I get back to my car, and I was the only one out there, like start to finish. And there were remains of a deer leg right next to my car. And so it's freaky. I was like, is this a gift, or is this a warning to stay away?
Tony Soprano would tell you they were sending you a message.
Yep, exactly. And then just a few years ago, I think I was on the St. Mary's Falls Trail, and there was a part where I went off the trail to use the restroom, and while I'm doing my thing, I look up at the tree I'm standing next to, and I see a carcass of a deer up in the branches. And of course, I'm thinking, like, this is some Blair Witch stuff. Like, did some Cole did a sacrifice? I was like, what the heck? Like, it scared me. I later found out that that's a common thing that mountain lions do. Will store a carcass up in the trees to come back to at a later time to finish their meal.
It's the mountain lion version of a doggy bag.
Yeah.
I think you don't have anything to worry about until the mountain lions start learning how to draw pentagrams in the sand or something.
Yeah.
Do not send me emails. I'm just kidding. Somebody will take offense. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I've never seen that, but I've heard that they do that because it's a way for them to get it away from other predators and to save it for later, like you said, because I guess a mountain lion can't really eat a whole deer at one shot. That's pretty cool. I've never seen that, though. That'd be pretty eerie and exciting to see all at the same time.
I took a photo of it, so I'll see if I can find it, and I'll just send it to you.
Cool. Well, Kevin, I think that's all I had on my list of stuff to talk about today. What about you? Oh, one more thing. We're not going to be political here, but we all know what's going on in the Ukraine and with Russia. I'll just say it's, regardless of whose side you're on, this is not a good situation. I got an email. We're recording this on Monday, starting Monday night and going until they decide they don't have to. They will be lighting up the clock tower at the Pioneers Museum in yellow and blue. The Ukrainian colors they will be lighting that up as a show of solidarity until further notice. And that is going to actually start 2 days before you hear this on Monday night. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. And I am pretty happy to see that our local government officials in Colorado Springs are doing that. So good for them. And I don't know how big of a Ukrainian population we have in Colorado Springs. I have no idea. But it doesn't matter. This is a matter of, I think you can argue it's a matter of humanity, regardless of what nationality the people involved are. So kind of cool. Yeah. So if you want to see that, highly encourage it. If we're lucky, it won't have to be like that way for long, but we'll see what happens.
Yep. I've got my fingers crossed that it ends like now.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's awful.
That would be good if it did. All right, Kevin. Well, if that's all you got, I think we'll call it good. And thanks for being here again. For the listeners, if you'd like to help support this podcast, patreon.com, patreon.com/hikingbob, and you can become a patron, help support this podcast. And we would greatly appreciate it. But that's all I've got for today, Kevin.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you later.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us, because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.